Parshas Korach, I wanted to discuss a sensitive topic, the topic of great people making mistakes. Because that's really what we find in Parshas Korach, is the idea of Korach and 250 Roshei Sanhedrin. They're Anshe Shem, they're great people, and they were involved in a mistake, and it in fact costed them dearly. So we talk about great people making mistakes, so we have to realize there's a difference between what we see in our generation, which is you could have a great person and you could see a superficial flaw in them. You could see, and it doesn't mean they're not a great person. It's unfortunate. I discussed it once with one of my Rebbeim. Unfortunately, in Niskat Nuadoros, in today's generation, you can actually have somebody who even has a superficial, worked on themselves their whole life, but we have chesronos, and it doesn't mean the person is not a great person. But when we talk about in the times of the Tanakh, when we talk about in times of the Chumash, we're talking about people who were greater in every possible way than anything we can imagine. And we're not talking about superficial chesronos. When the Torah talks about the brothers of Yosef sinning or David HaMelech sinning, we're talking about something which, as the Masorah is, that it's something that if we would do such a thing, in that context, it wouldn't be considered wrong. It was only critiqued because of their greatness, they should have made a different decision. Chazal are very clear that any superficial approach to saying there was a superficial ches, something that we would have noticed as being wrong, is an incorrect approach to the topic. And the proof, for example, somebody like Korach, that he gets 250 people to join him, he rallies up the entire Klal, so it's obviously more than petty jealousy. It's not something that everybody looked at and saw, what are you trying to do? At the same time, it's clear from Chazal that there was an element of jealousy involved in what caused him to sit down when he made a decision. Again, these were not impulsive moves. These were this was a long premeditated decision. But Chazal took Korach as a very great person whose Yetzer Hara was able to ensnare him. Chazal are bothered, how could a great person like Korach, somebody who was worthy of carrying the Aron Kodesh, succumb to his Yetzer Hara in this manner and start this feud with Moshe Rabbeinu? And Chazal give two suggestions. One of them is because of the midah of Kena, that on some level there was a jealousy which caused him to make a flawed judgment. And the other pshat Chazal give is because of the fact that he saw Shmuel HaNavi was going to be coming from him. And so he said that he'll be saved because of him. And I saw Rav Moshe actually points out, so why does he need to be saved because of Shmuel HaNavi if he's really right? You see, on some level he knows that he's wrong, and there's a certain midas hagaiva which is behind it. We see this idea of a great person being ensnared by the Yetzer Hara. And in the context that Klal Yisrael had gone through many Nisayonos, whether it was the Egel HaZahav, or there's a few at the end of Baal Oscha, and Korach had not succumbed to any of those, but at this point, Korach is now being involved in this situation. And Chazal tell us, a very scary medrash in Medrash Rabbah Yudches Gimel, it tells us, it makes a drasha from the Kriyei Moed, Anshe Shem, it darshans it to the Anshe Shem by the Nisayon in Parshas Nasa, who inaugurated the Mishkan. And the Torah and the Medrash tells us that in fact the Nisayon, the ones who inaugurated the Mishkan with those karbanos, which are forever for posterity and symbolism of the whole future of the Jewish people, that they were part of the Anshe Shem. They were part of the group that joined Korach and were wiped out in the fire. That in fact such great people were able to become part of this situation. And not only that, there's a Marzu who tells us that it was 12 minus 2. Two of them could not have been part of this story. One of them, Shlumiel and Suri Shaddai, who was the Nasi of Shimon at that time, it says it couldn't have been him. Why? Because he was actually Zimri ben Salu. At the end of the 40 years, the story with Pinchas and somebody cheats with a Moabite woman and Pinchas stabbed them, that was Zimri. That Zimri was the same Shlumiel and Suri Shaddai. So if you think about what that means, it means that he was not killed out over the 40 years. It means that he hadn't succumbed to the Meraglim Nisayon. And in this situation, the other 10 Nisayon apparently succumbed to a Yetzer Hara in some level, whatever dakos, whatever fine, subtle flaw that made them succumb in this situation to the Yetzer Hara, and on their level they deserve such a severe punishment. But Zimri had not fallen prey to that Nisayon, but yet he's gone down in history, in fact, as somebody who was killed by Pinchas, and we even see the subtlety in that situation. We see that the Jewish people were upset at Pinchas. What are you doing stabbing Zimri? Who do you think you are? You see in the Rashis and the Chumash. And at the same time, so we see that Zimri withstood in this situation. At a later point, it seems that he stumbled. And the Marzu tells us who's the other one who couldn't have been killed at this time was Nachshon ben Aminadav. I personally found this very traumatic, but he brings the Gra on the Seder Olam Rabbah. People can reach out to me for the Mara Malkum. Happy to send. Always happy when people reach out to me for Mara Malkumos. That the Gra points out from the Seder Olam Rabbah that Nachshon ben Aminadav was part of the Asaf Sof Asher B'Kibo. He'd been killed earlier. He was killed as part of one of the Nisyonos that the Torah mentions in Parshas Baloscha, the people who were B'Ksei HaMachane, and they were killed, and they were buried B'Kivros HaTava. This is right before they asked for meat, that in fact he had the great Nachshon ben Aminadav, a person who's one of our greatest heroes in national history, in fact had gotten involved in that situation, and it seems somehow that he was able to be nichshal in some dakidakoistic way, and as a result he was punished. He was wiped out already in that story. He didn't in this earlier period. Just the idea, I think it's interesting because we know Nachshon ben Aminadav's greatness, and it's scary to think that he could have fallen prey in one of these stories. And to appreciate that Korach was also as great as these people, maybe even greater, because he seems to have been the leader. It seems like these people followed him and looked up to him. It seems like he rallied a large portion of Klal Yisrael to his side. To appreciate the power of the Yetzer Hara, appreciate how it can cause people to succumb, even if they've passed all the Nisayon. In the Yetzer Hara, we have to learn. Rabbi said we have to learn from the Yetzer Hara. He never gives up. He never quits. He always keeps trying. Always keeps going. I'd like to make two applications. One is when we're judging people in our world. Not that we should be in the judging people business, but I think the Yetzer Hara gets us from both directions, because I think we have to realize that a person could be a big Talmid Chacham and a tremendous Baal Musar, not just somebody who's learned, but as my Rebbe used to have a line, a person who's well-versed in Talmud, that he knows Torah, but he's clearly not a Talmid Chacham who's developed himself properly. You can have a real Talmid Chacham and a real Baal Musar, and such a person can make mistakes. And really, when the Gedolim tell us that people who are good people doing good things, that they're making mistakes, we have to be Mekabel. And when they tell us that maybe the person is actually not, they don't consider him as big of a tzaddik as he looks like to us, we also have to be Mekabel. I think people have a Yetzer Hara. Sometimes they say, Fakert, why are the Gedolim making machlokas? But if they feel a need to say, if they hold such a thing, especially if they feel a need to go public about it, I think we have to be Mekabel. Yes, a great person, good people can have Nisyonos, and they can fall prey to a Yetzer Hara. And a person who was a tzaddik might not remain a tzaddik. Chazal tell us the Yochanan Kohen Gadol that he, after 80 years, he succumbed to his Yetzer Hara. He no longer was a great person. I think it's also true the other way. Sometimes you have a person who we might see chesronos in, might see flaws, but the Gedolim tell us, no, this person is a great person despite those challenges. In fact, he is worthy of tremendous respect. And I think we have to also make the application to ourselves to realize that we have a Yetzer Hara. No matter how many times we've passed challenges, every day the Yetzer Hara gets up, always trying to fight, always trying to get us to know. And if a person's not careful, they can succumb and they can fall down the slope. And there's Gaiva in great positions, and there's Nisyonos in having power, and we always have to be on guard against the power of the Yetzer Hara. May Hashem give us the strength and the perspective to do so. Wishing you a wonderful Shabbos.